Hi. Kate, thank you for joining me again. I'm excited that we have had so much time together over the last couple weeks.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me back, Sybil. It was great working with you at the conference last week and excited to be here with you today on your podcast.
Yeah, so we've been asked about whether the presentation that Kate and I did was videoed, if people could watch it after the fact that weren't at the conference. And unfortunately, that's a no. But I wanted to have Kate and I have this discussion of just our experience of the conference. It was a International Family Justice Center conference hosted by the Alliance for Hope and Domestic Shelters. Just our thoughts on that experience, and then share a little bit about our presentation and just some takeaways, because I think all of you that didn't get to go could really benefit from that. So I guess just to get started, Kate, what was your overall feel after leaving this conference?
What I really came away with was these guys are approaching this from the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
My whole experience, my lived experience, my study on coercive control inside of the university system, and then my experience as a professional in the system has been less than ideal. Uh,
Yeah.
my experience with professionals in the system and with the ways that the domestic violence industrial complex is approaching things, I'm constantly upset and outraged by the ways that certain things are done. And that didn't happen here. And it was very validating as a survivor. It was validating as a professional who is trying to do things to help transform this system into one that works. And it made me feel that they state that they are survivor centered, right? That they
Mm-hmm.
make a really big deal out of incorporating survivors' experiences and their perspectives and their ideas. And they make a big deal about this idea that they're going to treat them with respect and dignity. Well, when I hear companies say that, I'm usually like, well, I'll believe it when I see it. I really saw it here. I felt it throughout the entire conference. I came in to sign up at the table and they addressed me by name, recognized me, gave me a hug, welcomed me there. Wow. And then I felt that same kind of consistent validation and acceptance and just respect for me as a person and as a survivor and how I might be able to contribute. I felt that through the whole process. So that was what I came away with. But you're not a survivor, right? So
Yeah.
you had a totally different experience. What was your experience?
Yeah, somewhat similar. And coming at it from this professional perspective, it felt like there was so much openness that people were open to hearing, even if it challenged their experiences or challenged their beliefs. So I think that was where it was really nice, right? Hopping in and talking about something controversial, as we are prone to do, um, with a very passionate stance. I never know how it will be received, how I will be received. And it felt like we were in the right place. And whereas not everyone cussed like I do, which I was so good, everyone, just so you all know, I only said like 2 or 3 bad words during our whole presentation. I did so good. I just felt valued. And I felt that not just the presenters also weren't celebrity status to where they wouldn't talk to people. They were human beings, also a part of the crowd. Like, I could go up to any of the presenters and feel comfortable talking to them. And not just because I will talk to anybody, because that's my way of being, but I just felt that humanness and openness to learning, because everyone was there for a really common purpose: to make the system work ethically for survivors.
That level of professional humility I have not encountered very much.
Yeah.
I have in fits and starts, I'll see it in individuals inside of a conference. But here, it was overall, it was the whole culture, the whole environment. And I feel like that humility and that curiosity about what needs to be done to make things better, they were so open and I was really impressed.
Yeah. 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 I very much enjoyed myself there. So I thought I wanted to touch on just a couple of the things that I heard that impacted me in a way that, right, I was like, oh my gosh, this person is saying the thing that maybe I want to say, or I don't have the words to say, or maybe I don't have the right, this is kind of graphic, but I was like the right genitalia to say, right? Like, I don't know. Because there was a specific speaker there that I just was, first of all, enamored with because he is an amazing speaker. His story is very engaging as well, but the things that he was saying are all the things, and Kate and I were sitting next to each other, just like in awe of this man. And his name is Jim Henderson, or I guess James is probably his for real name, but he is a probation officer, social worker, and I believe a child survivor. But gosh, some of the things that he said, I wanted to stand up and cheer for what he was saying. So one of the things that he talked about was how and he pointed at us, right? In the crowd, we are all professionals working with victims and survivors of domestic violence, coercive control, and said that we as a whole are training victims to not ask for help.
Yeah.
And how powerful that all of us, right? That openness, people were open to hearing that. I didn't notice any like, oh, well, that, not me or not, right? Like that poo pooing of his statement, because that was his experience as a human and then his experience as a professional in this space too.
And he gave such great examples of specifically, we are training survivors not to report. And,
Yes.
for me, a lot of the examples he gave may not have been identical, the things that have happened to me, but they were so similar that, yeah, the whole time I was sitting there inside, just like,
Hmm.
I was so pleased not just to hear him say these things, but because the crowd was so receptive, it
Yeah.
gave me hope that there are people that care and are working to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. And then the other thing that I want, if there are professionals out here listening, that I want us to look at, because he said it this way, and I feel like it is exactly what I want to do as a professional, mental health professional in the space, as running the community, as the podcast. But he said the question that we need to be asking is, what is the safest thing we can do for this family? That is, if we can conceptualize families and our role with that question, what is the safest thing we can do for this family in this moment? Oh my, I can't even imagine the change that would happen in our world, in our culture, in this family court arena. I can't even imagine the change.
Yeah, I absolutely agree because even though the system claims to have children's best interests at heart, when you don't center the children's safety, you're not serving their best interests. And the system is not currently doing that, even though they say that they are.
Yeah.
What I would add to the safety piece is how can we support victims' dignity, liberty, autonomy,
Hmm.
freedom, and justice along with the safety aspect? Because yes, I agree. We need to ensure that victim survivors are safe. But unfortunately, when we use the word safe, a lot of people imagine that from
Yeah.
the single incident model and they think of it as physical safety.
Hmm.
And because they're not linking up these incredibly harmful psychological types of abuse and other forms of abuse that actually cause physical harm, whether you're being physically touched or not, coercive control causes physical harm.
Hmm.
Safety we just need to expand our vision of that. It needs to
Yeah.
impact that as well.
I know it's interesting because from a mental health perspective, I am always qualifying why I'm using the term safe. Like, you need to feel safe. And I'm like, wait, okay. So no, I'm not just talking about physically safe. I'm talking about your felt safety and psychological safety. And I wish I didn't have to almost literally every time I'm talking about safety with newer clients that know me and I've worked with for a long time, they know that. But even when I'm doing a training, I always have to qualify what I mean by safe. That's keeping children safe and safety within families, that it's not just that physical safety.
That's exactly right. And there's a whole movement right now within the workplace environment for the Psychological Safety Act, where
Hmm.
they're trying to get it to be psychologically safe within your work environment. And so we're watching this occur across contexts. And I think we're really headed in the right direction when we center not just physical safety, but psychological safety as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just literally, and we did not plan a lot for this episode. It's just, we're going to have a conversation. It's going to be great. But I did want to, because we've been asked for it, do some of the questions that we were asked during our presentation. And what we just talked about leads straight into the very first question that Amanda asked us was, what are the myths and misconceptions of our current family court system and how abusers use it to continue to abuse? So what would you say are, right, we don't have time
Oh, I
to
know.
go through all the myths and misconceptions. And what you and I spoke a lot about, we've kind of already touched on a little bit.
Yeah. And as you said, there are lots, but I think they sort of fall under some main categories. From my perspective, most of the myths are they're sexist, misogynistic myths. They're patriarchal
Hmm.
that position women and mothers as less than in some way. They have very high expectations from others, but we have very low value. So a lot of the myths are around that. And then I would say another main problem in the system, as far as myths is concerned, is that there's this concept that children need two parents to be healthy, to be safe, that is the best situation for a child. And the truth is, it is best for a child to have two parents if both of those parents are not harming them.
Yeah.
One of those parents is harming them. And if one of those parents is harming their other parent, it is much safer, much healthier for those children to only have contact with the healthy, protective parent.
Yeah.
All of the research that the father's rights were really just it's really just abusers' rights, right? It's not really
Hmm.
rights because fathers who are not abusive understand the importance of the mother-child bond,
Yes.
and they don't intentionally fracture that relationship, but abusers intentionally do.
Hmm.
So anyway, there's this body of research that says children need both parents. Well, this entire body of research was done on two healthy parents. It wasn't done with abusers.
Yes.
You're drawing a conclusion based on information that isn't relevant to the question at hand.
Yeah. It's not even apples and oranges, right? It's like apples and like a giraffe. Like, they're completely different. And it drives me bonkers that we have the research, right?
Yes.
We have the research on what domestic violence, and I would say we have the research on what coercive control does. Granted, that language hasn't been used as much in like long-term research. We have evidence of what that looks like in a child's development, how it impacts them. We have all this research that's not being used. And yeah, the other thing that, again, it's overgeneralized, but the belief is that the family court system, what they tout is, we will do what's in the best interest of the child. And unfortunately, that is not typical, that is not what they're looking at. And that needs to change. That needs to change. And again, we have the research. to show what is best for kids. But those patriarchal structures and belief systems and biases prevent that from like sneaking in and coming in. But I do want to say, I work with male survivors in my practice. We see a lot of men who are abused. It looks different, right? And we have a lot of two-family homes where, yes, the father would never want to harm that relationship between the parent and child. They understand the importance of that. And so, and I know Kate probably gets these too, but when I get the trolling about how I'm a man hater and all of the things, no, we good dads, we want you, we need you,
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
want you. Like
Well,
you are so helpful for your kids.
yes.
So,
Yes. And there's also this concept as well that just because a man has abused his adult partner or ex partner doesn't mean he can't be a good dad. Well, sorry, that's not true. That's not what we see in the research. From the research, we know that when a abuser harms the other parent, that is actually child abuse because of the negative impacts on the child of that behavior. We have the ACEs study and other studies, and the ACEs study has been repeated and expanded.
mhm,
And we have tons of data now that show that it is not correct that just
yeah.
because they beat the wife doesn't mean they can't be a good dad. They are not fit parents when they have been willing to do the things that are involved in a pattern of domestic violence or coercive control.
Yeah. And what I've seen in practice, so this is experience, and I'm sure there's research on this. I just do not have it in front of me. And so I'm not going to pull from it. But there are differences within what domestic violence can look like. There are a handful of people that I've worked with over the years. I've worked with their kids, I've worked with the parents, where it is a skill deficit to where they do not have the skill to manage shame or disagreement or whatever, and they blow up and there is an incident. There is a significant difference when you look at the patterns when there is this constant underlying coercive control, feeling of entitlement. When that is present, that is very different. And that is how an abuser in that context, that is how they've learned to work in their world with everybody in their world. Right. And so then you see the ones where it's a skill deficit and they're blowing up left and right. They're like all over the place. Those are very different people. And I think the ones that we come into contact with more, specifically in the family court system, are the ones with a pattern of coercive control, pattern of entitlement. This is how they work in their worlds. And I am not discounting and excusing the skill deficit in a parent who's blowing up at their children or at their spouse. But man, this is why we can't just see like the single incident. We have to look at those underlying patterns that are present because you can see them.
Yeah.
You can see them.
Yeah. And what you're describing is the distinction between situational couple violence,
Mhm.
resistive violence, and coercive control.
Yeah.
We need to get much, much better at distinguishing between these three types of domestic violence because until we do, we're going to continue to put people down the wrong path.
Yeah.
We need pathways that are effective for each of these types so that they can be addressed because someone who has a skill deficit needs what? Skills.
Yeah. Yep.
But someone who is deeply entitled, someone who is sadistic and cruel and deceptive and manipulative in their entire environment, regardless of whether that's in their family or their job or whatever, those people, we have not found ways for those people to change. There's no evidence
No.
those people are going to get any better. And so when we find a pattern of coercive control with that level of entitlement, that willingness to weaponize the children, that's where we know these folks, the children need to be protected from unsupervised contact with these people because will cause harm.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And I think that leads us into what challenges. So we were asked this question, what are the challenges that victims and survivors face when going into the family court system with their abuser? Again, similar to the first question, so many. Like we don't have time for all of the things. Man, we touched on financial, we touched on the mental health piece, we touched on so many pieces. What would you say is maybe the thing that comes up the most for you in when you're working with cases and you're witnessing cases? What would be the one or two top challenges that you're seeing?
The biggest problem is the way that the system views the perpetrator and the targeted victim. When they look at the targeted victim who is having all these trauma responses because they've been terrorized and tortured over a period of time, and it has caused extreme nervous system disruption,
Mm-hmm.
see that targeted victim, instead of seeing that trauma as trauma and as something that can be healed and will go away once they are no longer being abused, they instead view that person as unstable. Similarly, they view this perpetrator who's not, doesn't look unstable because they're calm and relaxed. They know they have all the power. They've had all the power.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're relaxed and calm. And the system is misinterpreting their calmness as fitness, as reliable and responsible. They don't realize that these people are incredibly manipulative and deceptive. And because they're not seeing that, they are getting these cases upside down and backwards consistently.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is the biggest problem that we're facing.
Yeah. And along with that, when courts do want some more information here, and this goes back to one of the presentations that Kate and I both went to while we were there. It was another presentation on family court post-separation abuse stuff, but it was a discussion, which we're going to do a longer episode on this because I think it warrants it. But so a court will then want psych evals for both parents because they're trying to get more information, right? So in theory, yes, that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. But the psych evals that are given typically harm the victim survivor and benefit an abusive person. And again, we don't have time to go into all the details of these assessments, but even when a court is trying to get more information, it isn't working.
Yeah, because they're looking to the wrong place.
Yes, yes.
What psych evaluation isn't going to tell you that this person is entitled and dangerous. We don't have an evaluation that'll tell you that. Now,
No.
you do a coercive control evaluation and you find coercive control, then you know that they're entitled and they're likely dangerous depending on, where they fall on that continuum. But a
Yeah.
psych evaluation is much more likely to make the targeted victim look like the problem because they have been so severely harmed by
Mm-hmm.
the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And actually, as you said, it benefits the perpetrator and it harms the targeted victim. And yet the system appears to see it as fairness. They
Mm-hmm.
think it as that well, we're equally judging them. No, not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
The context, which was the most important piece.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about this because I only have, and I might miss one or two, right? But I'm thinking I've been doing this specific work in my therapy practice since around 2011, 2012, like working with survivors, kids and survivors in family court. And I can think of two, like off the top of my head, cases where the MMPI pulled out narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder.
Wow, really? That's
Two.
interesting.
And so I'm like, oh man, right? Like if we actually look at that. And then the other thing, again, whole nother episode on this, but psych assessments actually have no correlation to parenting. Zero. So the judge is using these psych assessments to determine if you're going to be an okay parent. And one does not cause the other, right? They don't even fit. That's not what it's for. So I think that that's, again, when they brought it up, it was, I'm going to share their names. We have Jill Montez and Dr. Ramona Probasco. They are the ones that did an awesome presentation as well. And so they brought that up. And so I think it's important for us to touch on. And then the other thing that I was thinking that really stood out to me, and we talked a tiny bit about this before we hopped on, and then we've talked about it before, but when we're discussing legislative changes, and I was talking about Cadence law and reunification and reunification camps and things like that, and people in the audience were like, wait, what? Help me understand, these children are removed from a safe parent completely and put for like 90 plus days and put with their abuse. Help this make sense. And whenever I see that response, I'm like, yes, because it does not. Like when you're coming at it from how can we find the safest way to work with this family? Like what's going to be the best for these kids? What's the safest way to work with? We know, like it logically is like, nope, that's not it. That's not it. And so it's always really good to see responses. That's hopeful to me when I see those responses of like, wait, what? That helped me make that make sense.
Yeah, it's very validating to have people who have not already been introduced to how these things are working, to have them go, what that, huh?
Yeah.
And it's because the way that the courts are coming at this is from a false assumption. The false assumption that a child needs two parents. And so all of their solutions to the problem of maintaining contact with two parents require
Mm-hmm.
contact with both parents. And that whole thing is wrong. It's all leading us down a path that places children in harm's way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had that experience last week. The time, when we're recording this, we were at the conference last week. And then on Monday of this week, I was at another training here in Colorado. It's the CARES Network training, and it's all the professionals, it's behavioral health and medical, the goal is to improve child welfare outcomes. And there was an attorney, I'm going to name drop her because not that everyone knows her, but I was so happy with her. Betsy Fortis, she's an attorney here in Colorado, who spoke about parental alienation, reunification camps. And a lot of the behavioral health providers were nodding their heads and understood. The medical providers who were, when they testify, typically they're only testifying in a criminal type proceeding, child abuse, neglect, sexual abuse proceedings. And they don't have these longer term experiences with families like a behavioral health provider does. And watching their expressions and they're like, what on earth? And some of the anger and confusion was, again, so validating. And so I just, again, want to thank Betsy Fortis for that, because anytime, I don't know about you, Kate, but anytime I'm in a training or presentation and on the slide, all you see is parental alienation, I'm like, I have this moment of how is this going to be discussed? What is going to be shared about this? Yeah, so because I didn't know that was showing up at this training. No idea. And so it popped in and I was like, ugh. And then it was done in such a beautiful way. It felt hopeful that these professionals that do touch the lives of survivors and their children, they now have this like understanding of what's going on out there. And so I want to bring that to, because we actually talked about it a couple times today, and it's amazing, is when Amanda and Ashley were first like, hey, what are we going to talk about? And they were like, okay, we want you to end with what's hopeful. Can you share hope about the family court system with our audience? Because this is the Alliance for Hope. And both of us were like, huh, okay. And I think you were like, yeah, like not it. Like Sybil gets to do that. He's like, not it. Like nose goes if you're in one of my groups, they do nose goes. But I felt leaving there, being there, and then again, this other presentation, I felt some hope in some change.
Just the fact that these family justice centers are expanding and proliferating, right? We need them everywhere. Just that in and of itself is really hopeful, because these centers are set up in a way to bring all the professionals that serve survivors into one location, under one roof, which is a huge step forward toward protecting survivors. Because when you go into the system and you don't know how the system works as a survivor, and you think that the person you're talking to understands how it all works, and then you discover, oh no, these people don't know what these people know, and these people don't know what these people know. Everything is siloed in these little bitty systems there. And it's excruciating for a person who's already traumatized, who's already afraid of losing their kids, who's already been, some have been physically attacked and have physical injuries from that, in addition to whatever psychological and emotional harm there's been. But they have to then go from place to place to place to place to place. And the information that they're given from one place to the next contradicts each other.
Mm-hmm.
And in one environment, you're expected to do one thing. And in another environment, you're expected to do the exact opposite. And so as a survivor, no matter what you do, you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's what these family justice centers are fixing.
Yeah. Or that goal to prevent that.
Put everybody under that one roof. And that's where the real hope I can see.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot to do, but
Yes.
there's certainly hope coming away from this conference.
Yeah. And I think even just the numbers of people that were interested, right? We were, and I'm not going to name drop, but Kate and I were against some competition during our session. We were like, dang, they get to choose between us and these fancy people. And a topic that is, again, controversial to some extent, or like, ugh, who wants to talk about family court related stuff? But we had a full room of active, engaged professionals that feel like not confident in their information in this space. And they see, wow, this is an area where victims and survivors need so much support, and we don't know how to support them. And I've been in that place. Early on in my career where I was like seeing the shit show and did not know how to help. And as a helping professional, that feels horrible to be sitting there like, I see this, I see the disaster, I'm doing what I know to do, and it is not helping, and it is not working. And these larger systems are fucking shit up.
They sure are. And if you as a professional feel helpless, imagine
Yes.
like for a survivor who's going through that over and over again at each place that they go, they're hitting the same walls and the same roadblocks over and over again. So that helplessness, we need to find ways to not just solve it for victims, survivors. I call them targets.
Mm-hmm.
We also need to solve that helplessness for the helping professionals. Like
Yes.
our systems need to make it so that the systems work in a way that not only the survivors are doing well, but that the professionals need to be able to do well too. We need to be able to thrive inside this system. And from my perspective right now, nobody is.
Yeah. No, and it is so important because speaking personally, when I'm in that place of I am watching this happen, I see my job, like when I'm the child's therapist, I see my job as that child. It's my job to help this child be okay, no matter the circumstance. But the circumstance is going to keep them my client forever, right? That's not our goal. My job is to work with people and then they go about their merry way in such a better space than when they came to see me. But oh my gosh, I am having these kids and I'm telling you, for like 2, 3, 5, 7 years because their container is not going to change. And so basically, I'm like, okay, when you can get out of the house, and it's almost like when I'm talking with, the parents, when they're like, gosh, I have 5 more years till my child ages out, right? Sitting in that space feels horrible. It makes me feel angry. I feel jaded. I am not as good a therapist, honestly, because my stuff comes in into the space. I'm really honest with my clients when that's happening. So it's not even right. Like it's setting me, who is a very well educated in this area therapist, it's setting me up even to feel frustrated and angry. Like I can't help. And I can see, right? Like I can see if we did this, then our kids would be okay. But nobody's listening to me. So
Right.
we're not going to do that.
Right. And so I have my quicksand model of coercive
Hmm.
control, my training model. And that's one of the main concepts inside the model is that not only are these targeted victims trapped in quicksand, where
Hmm.
every move they make only sinks them deeper.
Hmm.
Every time they try to be proactive to protect, to increase safety, to increase healthy environment for their children, every action sinks them deeper. But the same is true for the professionals trying to help that target. Everyone is being sucked down deeper into the quicksand. The only people that are winning in this environment are the coercive controllers, but
Hmm.
they they are not winning in a way that serves them. They are only winning in that they are getting what they demand, but they're not getting what they need. Because
Yeah.
if they could face that what they're doing is harming others and change their behavior, then they will actually have a much healthier, much happier, much more autonomous life than they have right now, while all they're doing is pulling people's strings.
Yep. Yeah. And for anyone who has not heard Kate before or hasn't heard of the quicksand model, and I'm going to post it in the show notes, but we did an episode forever ago, it feels like. It's like so long ago, specifically on coercive control and the quicksand model. So I'm going to link that episode. I should have thought of like what that episode number is before we hopped on, but I did not. But I will post a link to that episode in the show notes so that you guys can get a deeper dive into what that is. And as we wrap up, do you have any thoughts as we leave this episode, right? And for anyone listening, I don't know, to offer hope.
I think really we need to find a way to dismantle the coercive and controlling tactics that are structural throughout our
Mhm.
system. We need to be able to unravel the things in our own thinking that actually causes coercive control to continue. It reinforces it. So we need to address
Yeah.
it in ourselves. We need to address it in our families, our communities, our businesses, and our systems. Because once we have dismantled coercive control in our systems, then we can redesign those systems and we create systems that support everyone's, not just the survivors, not just the perpetrators, but the professionals and everyone in the system for their dignity, their safety, their autonomy, justice, and their freedom.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just want to thank domestic shelters. I want to thank Alliance for Hope. That thank you for not just hosting this amazing conference, bringing people together, but bringing Kate and I even closer together, because we've had interactions in the past and we support each other. But I am just so grateful that we actually got to spend real time together as humans and not just in this professional space. So I am so grateful for that as well.
As am I. Thank you for
So
saying, and thank you to everyone who participated in that conference for having us and for everything that you're going to do moving forward to make this
yeah.
better.
Absolutely. Well, and for those of you listening, if you have more questions for Kate or I, just shoot me an email. Y'all know it's me who actually responds to you. But if you have a specific question for Kate, I am happy to get her involved in this too. info@risingbeyondpc.com. I thank you all for just listening and being loyal to me and this podcast. And I appreciate you. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for having me.